and welcome back to another episode of the Sedona Psychics. And today I have Relic. Say hi to the people.
Hey everybody.
Relic, aka Mike. He also has many other roles in the center as well. He also does our concierge and horror photos and things like that. So you'll see him up front as well. But today we are going to dive in and what Relic really works the best with. It's like his niche with us. And he really enjoys using these tools to help people on their path, help the healing, help you release things, and maybe even learn something new about yourself. You never know. So today we're going to really dive into runes and also sound healing that Relic offers here at the center. He does also offer tarot and oracle, but runes and sound healing are like his best friends. So Relic, tell me, like, with the runes, like, how would you explain to somebody who's never heard about runes? Like, in your own words, explain that for us.
So runes, like the simplest way to think about runes, they are an ancient writing system. So basically it's a very old alphabet that comes from the Nordic part of the world. So a lot of people think Vikings with runes. Vikings did use them as their written language. They predate Vikings by quite a bit. And they also serve as a set of sacred symbols. So that's really usually more what you're looking at when you're using them for divination and things like that.
Okay.
But yeah, basically they're very old alphabet. It's the simplest way to think about them.
Okay, so I guess in a way, maybe they're similar to tarot with like certain meanings with them, or
Yes, there's a lot of overlap between tarot and other divination systems in general. So tarot, for people that have really dug into tarot, tarot has a lot of foundations in the Kabbalah, and that is really, again, like another writing system that also kind of
right? Yeah.
serves as a set of mystical knowledge. And Ogum is another one that is a divination system, but also a alphabet. So I think there's a lot of overlap, and I think some of that has to do with the fact that like writing in general is magic, just in and of itself. Like
True.
if you
Yeah.
think about what writing allowed humankind to do as far as passing on knowledge to future generations, that has been kind of instrumental in a lot of developments across different aspects of human nature. So yeah, I think there's a lot of magic just baked into writing in and of itself. But I think as you dig deeper into these systems, you start to see that there's even more kind of interwoven into them than you notice at a first glance.
Right. Okay. And you've been with us for what, over 2 years?
Yeah, no, I think it's going.
Are we going on 3 years?
Yeah, I want to say it's three going on four, but I'll have to check the
Okay.
dates.
Okay.
But I know it's coming up in May, so it's coming up next month.
All right. All right. I mean, because I know when you first started working with us, like you just like knew the basics of a lot of things, and you were just doing aura photos at the
Yeah,
time until you were like ready to actually step into readings.
yeah.
So what shifted you onto the path of using runes and things like that?
Well, I think runes are something that I have been fascinated with for a long time, and I've used in my own personal spiritual practice. And I would say, to be 100% accurate, my initial fascination with them was more as a language. When I very first found runes, I found a book that explained how to use them as a divination tool, but I was much more interested in being able to write in them, and also being able to like read things that had been written a long time ago in them. Because if you
Okay.
go back to like all of the old Norse sagas and rune stones, and these are all like their inscriptions in runes. So it's like you have to know the code before you can kind of decipher the messages
Yeah.
that were written
Yeah.
down. So I think for me, it was like interesting from that perspective. And so I worked with it more as a language initially. And then after I kind of became familiar with the meanings of the symbols, then I think that's when I started to see the potential in using it as like a tool for looking within for self-knowledge and self-development. And so that, again, it's something that I used for years and years myself in my own personal, private, spiritual practice before I was ever comfortable offering readings to other people. And even when I was comfortable doing that, I think I was really only like, it was like it had to be somebody close to me. It had to be a friend or a family member for me to
Right.
be
Right.
like, able to kind of step into that space. I think something about being here in Sedona and at the center really like propelled me into that next stage. And I think a lot of it was spurred from like wanting to be able to help others more. It's like I saw that there was a lot of people coming in
Hmm.
that had questions, and it's like I'd sort of understood some of what they were asking and how to explain, but I needed to like internalize the information better so that I could explain it in a more easy to understand way. So yeah, I think being here really like propelled me on that path. And I think in general, Dona showed me a lot of signs that like I was meant to be doing that. When I moved here, I don't know if I ever told you this story. So when I moved here, I left a lot of stuff in Tempe.
Yeah.
And then I had to go back and, clean my storage unit out. And so of course I rent a U-Haul truck. And U-Haul trucks always have like a random thing on the side of the truck, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it's usually like a monument or some famous place or something.
Yeah.
And so, of course, U-Haul trucks are randomly assigned, right? So I go to pick my U-Haul truck up, and what's on the side of my U-Haul truck that I'm using to collect my things and come back to Sedona, but literally the Kensington runestone, which is, for those who are not familiar with it, it's a runestone that's here in America. And so this one's kind of controversial because some people don't want to believe that Vikings made it here before other groups of
Hmm.
people. But regardless of whether the Kensington runestone is legitimate or not, just the fact that there were runes all over the side of my truck
Right.
that I'm using to move all my stuff to Sedona, it was like, okay, this is like, I couldn't get any more of a giant flashing neon like green light sign.
Yeah.
So
Spirit was like, here's the
yeah.
sign.
And I noticed that too when I got here. It was like, man, there's a lot of people doing tarot. There's a lot of people doing all the different things, but runes somehow were just kind of like absent.
Yeah.
Um,
Not very available.
yeah. So I think in a way, it's like spirit wanted me to bring that energy here to the
Hmm.
space. And so, yeah, I'm very grateful that I get to kind of be the bearer of the rune's knowledge. I think that's a really cool thing. Um, and um, yeah, and I mean, they're fascinating. If you dig into the Norse sagas that talk about how they were discovered, it's really it was Odin kind of doing a deep inner journey. The story really goes that he sacrificed his eye and he impaled himself on his own spear and hung from the world tree for 9 nights. And
That sounds brutal.
right, a pretty intense process. And then
Hmm.
through that, he was able to discover the wisdom and the knowledge of the runes. And luckily, Odin decided to be generous and bestow that wisdom and knowledge onto mankind. Runes are really like Odin's gift to mankind, to help us be able to see beyond ourselves or look inside of ourselves for answers. So I really think that it's a great tool for self knowledge and self discovery.
And reflection, I want to say
Yeah,
too. Yeah.
reflection, right? And I also think, and again, I mean, I'm the rune guy. Of course, I'm going to be biased, but I think they're simpler to learn than tarot. I think runes are the one, there's less of them. Like there's only 24 runes in the Elder Futhark alphabet. That's the one that's usually used for divination. So right out of the gate, you only have 24 things you have to remember as opposed to 78 cards in tarot.
Right.
So it's simpler from that standpoint. But I also think there is, in some ways, like more Western iconography baked into runes and their symbolism than some other divination tools that have evolved in other cultures that have like other symbolism that people from the Western world may not be as familiar with. So I think there's something that speaks to us in a very deep way when we start interacting with runes. And I love tarot too. There's nothing wrong with tarot, but I think runes to me are simpler and easier to learn and use.
Right. Now, let me ask you this. There's over time, especially for me too, I don't always use the exact meaning of that card. Maybe there's something else coming up that's not the exact meaning, but it's kind of along the same lines. Now, can you kind of do the same thing with runes too, like bringing in different information besides what the actual meaning is of the rune itself?
Yeah, definitely. I think about the runes as almost having like multiple levels to them, where there's usually like a very physical level of that energy, but then there's a lot of times a more spiritual aspect to that energy. Like a good example is the rune of the yew tree, which is really a symbol for flexibility and adaptability. So, like in a real world practical way, it's your ability to just roll with the punches of life and go with the flow. The more spiritual part of it is the yew tree is a symbol a lot of times for the world tree, and the world tree is how in Norse mythology, that's kind of how they view the different realms of reality being connected. That's what connects Midgard, where we are here, like Earth realm, to Asgard, where all the gods and the divine entities are. And so it's like in a practical physical sense, it's just flexibility. In a spiritual sense, it's like your ability to lean into those other parts of reality to talk to your guides and hear your ancestors. A lot of times when I do castings, I will use a cloth or a casting surface of some sort that has sections that are kind of designated. And so my tools learn like what part of the cloth they need to land on to get that message filtered through the more physical or the more spiritual like part of that message. So if you use runes in your own personal practice and you've gotten familiar with them, then I would say you can start incorporating some sort of layout where it designates either, past, present, future, above, below, something like that. I can post some examples at some point on our social media or something, but
Yeah.
that just gives you like another kind of lens to filter the message through. So I think that can help a lot. There's a classic one that is used in runes a lot. That's like the nine realms from Norse mythology. So that's a cool one that I use quite a bit. And then um, you can also draw them. Like I usually do casting, so I will. It's like throwing Yahtzee dice or something. You shake
Yeah.
them up, you throw them onto the table, you let them fall where they want to,
Yeah.
basically. And that's part of where spirit gets to put their hand in and help decide what message comes through. But you can also reach in the bag and pull one out if you are more drawn to do it that way. There's one of, I think, the cool things about runes too is there's not really a right or wrong way to work with a set of runes for divination. We do have some historical records of how they did rune casting a long, long time ago. Like Tacitus was I think a Roman historian that wrote about a whole bunch of stuff, including like I think he wrote about Jesus at one point. But
Hmm.
he wrote I think it's just called Germania. He wrote a thing about the Germanic tribes and how he saw them doing this ritual of cutting a fruit bearing tree branch up into small sections, carving symbols, and then casting them onto a white cloth as a way to assist in decision making processes. And so that's rune casting, right? So some people take from that like, oh, we're only supposed to use white cloths for the casting service, and some other things are kind of pieced out of that. I think if you're drawn to follow those traditions, that's fine. I think you also have to realize again, Tacitus was like a Roman guy who wasn't really like he didn't have the highest opinion of traditions and rituals in the Germanic people, which by the way doesn't mean Germany. Germanic means like it was all of Northern Europe basically back then. So it doesn't mean like the country Germany. That confuses people
Hmm.
sometimes. So
Yeah.
but yeah, so we do, again, we have like some historical record of how they did that, but mostly you kind of have to piece it together yourself. There's people like me that have, I think, pretty established their own system and method. So you can stand on the shoulders of giants and use somebody else's method and then kind of tailor it to your own style. But with runes, I think it's also totally okay to like just let them teach you how to work with them. So there's not like a right or wrong way to do runes.
Yeah,
Is it?
so kind of along the same line of like, anytime we're doing readings for clients and we're like, if you really want to start stepping into spirituality, do what feels right for you. And again, like a lot of the times there's no right or wrong way to do things, but also with certain, backgrounds with religion and, certain things, there's, a line of respect that you almost want to have for certain things. But I feel like pretty much, for the most part, runes are like anything else spiritual. Do what works best for you and cast how you want to cast, have a mat, don't have a mat, and then eventually down the road, maybe even, assign different meanings to it, or everybody's different who sits down in front of you. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So everyone's going to be different. I also know you made your own rune set,
I
did you
I
not?
did. That is one of the sets that I use most often is actually one that I crafted myself. It was made from a branch from a willow tree that was a gift from another one of the psychics that works here. So Jeffrey actually has a willow tree growing in his yard. And so he didn't know what I was going to make with it, but he gave me a branch from that tree. And he's like, I don't know, I'm just supposed to give you one of these. So I turned it into a set of runes, which I thought was really appropriate because the willow tree, if you look into the symbolism of the willow, it's very linked to intuition and that kind of energy. So it
Right.
seemed very appropriate. And people are drawn to that set a lot. I usually have like 4 or 5 sets of runes out, and I'll let people pick which one they're drawn to the most. And that's like probably one of the most common ones that people are drawn to. And then just to backtrack a little bit on the like different meanings for runes, you'll also notice this in books, guys. You'll notice like if you start reading books on runes, you'll notice that some authors will say a rune means one thing, some will say a rune means a totally opposite thing. If you want to get like as official to the source as you can, I would go ahead and look up the rune poems. There are several of them. Usually the one that is the most commonly used is the Old English rune poem. So it's what it sounds like. It's a poem. It's got like a short little stanza for each rune. It will kind of give you a clue as to what the meaning of that rune is. Some of them are a little paradoxical, but that's part of the way that runes work too. Runes also tend to represent both sides of an energy. So they represent strength, but at the same time they represent a lack of strength. So sometimes it's like just because the rune shows up, it doesn't necessarily mean the face value of what it is. You kind of look at what other runes are out, where it lands, all that stuff.
Right. You
And
gotta you
again,
gotta watch
different
the story
yeah,
unfold.
and then again, different authors will say different stuff. I think I read Ralph Bloom's book first. I love his set of runes that comes with that book. I do not agree with all of his meanings and the things that he attributes to them. Yeah, I would say check out the Old English rune poem if you want to really get to the source of what the runes mean, or just read a few different books and synthesize the meaning between the different authors because people will have different opinions.
Right. Well, I have a few more questions about the runes, and then we're going to kind of move on to the sound healing
Cool.
aspect of things. So, my first question is like when you're doing a reading with runes, do they ever surprise you?
Yes, a couple of the ones that jump out right away. I had a lady that wanted to know. So I should preface this by saying I don't do a lot of mediumship. I don't like offer that because I cannot guarantee it will come through. However, I was doing a just kind of regular rune reading, and at the end of it, the client asked if a certain person that she was connected to, uh, you know, if they could get a message from them. All right, let's give it a shot and see. And so I have a set of runes that are made from bones. And that tends to be the
Ooh.
one that I lean on when I want to try to get into that energy. And so I threw a whole handful of runes out, and the only ones that landed face up were H and I, literally like right next to each other. It was just that person saying hi from the other side. And she saw it, and the rune for H and I looked very similar to H and I in our alphabet. So it's like she knew right away.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have to explain that one. So that was pretty cool. I also had somebody recently that came in and I did a rune casting and it literally spelled her name like me. like in
Yeah,
yeah.
when that happened.
So that one was interesting because I also do a lot of name interpretations because again, runes are letters. So that's something that I always think is interesting in looking at people's names and what runes, like what runes make the sounds of their name and kind of looking at what energies are in their name that way. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting that like her name was the message that spirit wanted her to know. And that one was a lot of her tapping into her own power. So it made a lot of sense.
So that's awesome.
So yeah, that's a couple of the ones where like they've blown my mind level of been surprised. But there's all sorts of other examples too. So it never ceases to amaze me the level of like just how almost seemingly like perfectly orchestrated those things. It's just yeah, the right rune, the right card, it always comes out. That's one thing I've learned probably more than anything else is just to like trust the tools, trust the process, trust your guides. Like this stuff works if you set the stage and get in the right headspace and get out of your own way. It really does. It works.
Yeah, I feel like I repeat myself quite a bit in sessions saying that. Get out of your own way, guys. But hey, we're not perfect either. We
Yeah.
got in our own way a lot,
Yeah.
doing it when we first really all started. So my last question for you with the runes is it's almost kind of a two-parter. What rune are you connected with right now? And then is there anything else that you feel our audience should know about runes?
So I would say there's two runes I've been feeling very strongly connected to lately. One's one of the runes that I've always felt really connected to, which is the rune of the journey or Raiko. And this is the letter R in runes, which my spiritual name is Relik. So it's right there at the beginning of my spirit name. In a lot of ways, this one is a reminder to embrace the moment. It's the root of the journey. It's not the root of the destination. So it's really about embracing each step of the path along the way, not looking up at the top of the mountain and wondering what it's going to feel like when you get up there. It's like, where am I at right now? Where are my feet planted right now in this moment?
Right.
So that one I get a lot of strength out of remembering that. So that one is important for me. And then the other one lately, I've been working with Thor's energy a lot. So I love Thor as a spirit guide. I think we need a little bit of his energy in the world right now, right? Thor's energy represents removing of obstacles, removing of energies that no longer belong and resetting things back to a point where we can come back into balance. And so I think the world needs a little bit of that right now. So I've been asking him for help a lot and trying to send some positive energy out and clear some things away that, we all don't need collectively anymore.
No.
And again, it's all with the intent of making space and allowing more positive energy to come in. The other thing that I think that's cool to know about runes, which a lot of times people may not realize, runes can be used as a very powerful tool for manifesting. So runes are great for divination. If you want to use them like the same way you use tarot cards or something like that, they're fantastic for that. However, they're also phenomenal at inviting a certain energy into our life or into our field. So they can kind of be used like a magnet to pull a certain energy in. You need some more strength, there's a rune for that. You need some more wealth, there's a rune for that, right?
That's awesome.
And you don't always have to just work with one at a time. You can even get into working with bind runes, which is combining multiple symbols into one to kind of weave those energies together. The common one that everybody's already familiar with is right at the top of your phone notification thing.
Yeah, the
It's the
Bluetooth
Bluetooth symbol.
symbol.
That is a bind rune, guys. A lot of people don't realize that. This is younger Futhark, so this is like the later alphabet that the Vikings would have been using, but still runes, and it's the rune H and the rune B combined together, which is supposed to stand for Herald Bluetooth, which is like some Danish king that united, I think, Denmark and Norway or something like that. And so the guy that made Bluetooth must have been a Norwegian history buff or something. And I remember reading that they weren't even going to keep that name. That was like the in development name, but I don't know, for some reason it got kept. So everybody's got a binder and you got a little bit of magic right there at the top of your phone, people. So um
I love that.
yeah.
I love that. See, guys, you learn something new every day. Every day. So we're gonna move on now to the sound healing that you do. You've also done this at Airbnbs as well. Can you kind of explain to the audience and our listeners what is sound healing for you?
So I think the interesting thing about sound healing is it's really not, I don't really even think about it as me that's necessarily doing the healing. It's like when you're sound healing, a lot of times I think about it more as like my job is to set the stage and allow the right environment for the healing to happen. I think we live in a society now days where like everything is so go, 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 fast paced. Like people just don't take a moment to slow down. So sound has a profound way of just getting us out of our like monkey mind and just kind of bringing us into the present moment. And I think there's really something powerful in that. And I think it's interesting that our society mostly uses sound and music as a form of entertainment, but I think there is a lot of opportunity to use it as a tool for healing. And really, it's just something that I think, again, it creates the right environment. It sets the right stage. It allows the client to relax into a state where they can just naturally heal themselves and come back in balance. So that's the really cool thing for me about sound healing is it's like I'm almost more a witness to the healing than the actual like healer that's doing the work in a way. So it's a very it's a it's a really cool thing to get to witness. It's another one of those things where I've gotten a lot of personal um I've gotten a lot personally out of working with sound as a tool for my own healing. And so I think that's kind of where it spawned from. It's like I got so much out of it. I want to be able to offer this to other people and show other people what,
What they're
what they're capable
Yeah.
of and what can happen when you just are able to get into that very deep state of relaxation. And I think that's really what makes it happen. But yeah, I love sound tools. I use crystal bowls and a didgeridoo, probably like are my main two tools, but I have lots of other bells and whistles and things that I incorporate as I am called to do so. But yeah, sounds a phenomenal tool. If you haven't experienced sound as a healing tool, I would say you kind of owe it to yourself to explore that a little bit.
Yes.
You can come in somewhere like the center here. You can get an awesome session done in person. There's also a lot of recordings and stuff. So, I mean, if you're not sure, if you're on the fence, look up a recording of somebody playing sound bowls. And it's not quite as impactful, just like, live music's better, right? In general,
Yeah.
it still will kind of give you a little taste of it. That's something that we'll try to get like a clip at some point
Yeah.
put out
Yeah,
somewhere.
definitely.
And I don't know, maybe we already.
I think we do have one like on our older like social media posts. But yeah, we can get some new ones out there too. And I will say this from an outside perspective. You are still working your magic. You are holding space for those people to be able to relax and do what they need to do as the sound bath is going on as well too. And a lot of the times too, like with the crystal bowls that he uses, they are tuned to certain frequencies with your chakras. So it starts from the root and goes all the way up to the crown. So you're hitting like every aspect of that part. And I think what's really cool too is like it's almost like no sound bath is ever the same because I feel like you almost intuitively play how it needs to play for each group or each person and things like that. So I feel like every single one that you do is different one way or another because you are intuitively feeling what that person needs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's where the sound healer is bringing the magic into the situation
Give
is
yourself
is
more credit.
right. Right. And it is something where you're right. There is no like one set plan for sound baths. I'll have sort of an idea of what order I want to go in with certain instruments, but it's kind of like that Mike Tyson thing, like everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Like it's just until you really get in there and you start um you start doing it and then all of a sudden it just spirit whispers in your ear, okay, no, you play this next. And you just, I listen. I don't ask questions at this point.
Right. I also feel too that if somebody really wanted to work on a specific part of them, they'd be like, "Hey, can you focus more on the heart or, the root and, things like
Yeah,
that."
I will have people that will come in with a specific intention in mind for sound sessions. So that does happen. It's okay if you don't. Like if you want to get a sound session done and you don't know exactly why, that's okay too.
Hmm.
You don't have to have a specific requests that you want to get out of it. But I have had people come in where they know, what's kind of out of balance a little bit and they know what they want to focus on. And so I would encourage you, if you feel more that way, yeah, share that with whoever's doing your session because they can kind of tailor it to that. Yeah, I think with sound, it depends on the person too. Like some people really like I'll watch people when I'm doing it, and some people will relax more like in the lower tone, like, more root chakra,
Right. Yeah.
deeper tone
Yeah.
stuff. And then every once in a while, I'll get somebody who like they don't really get into that same state until I start getting up into the higher notes and like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
hitting up into third eye crown territory, and all of a sudden
Hmm.
now that person probably drops into they found their happy space, right?
Right.
So yeah, it does depend on the person too. So yeah, it's definitely like not there's no two sessions for sound are the same, I would
Right.
say.
Right. Now, also too, because we are in Sedona, do you feel that because we are here in Sedona, that sometimes maybe the sound sessions can get a little bit more intense? Like not in a bad way, in a good way, of like the intensity of the energy happening during the sound bath.
Yeah, I think sometimes, and probably not just even in sound baths, but I think sometimes in healing in general, when you're here in Sedona, like Sedona likes to help and
Yeah.
and and get in the mix and lend a hand where she can. And so I have had moments like I had one where I was doing one in an Airbnb and they had a big balcony that was open and it was a little bit stormy when we started. And then like right when I got into the part where I was doing some heavy drumming, like we started getting thunder. And so it was like Sedona was joining in and like making some
Yeah.
sound along with the drums. So yeah, there are some moments like that where you can tell the energy of the space and the land is kind of assisting the process. And I like to invite that stuff in. I mean, I also work with chumpy stones, which are a Peruvian thing, which is really for connecting with land energy. Like in Peru, they're used to connect to the sacred mountains there. Here, I usually use them more to try to connect to like the vortex sites and draw energy in from certain places around town. And so I invite that energy in intentionally. But I think just being in here in Sedona, like you're gonna, a little bit of that's gonna rub off on you in a good way, no matter what,
Right. Right.
even without trying.
Yeah. I love that. So we're gonna kind of wrap this up here in the next minute or so. Do you feel like there's any like big misconceptions about, sound healing or runes or anything that you
Mm,
offer?
think I mean, I think with runes, just like tarot, I think sometimes there's misconceptions around them being inherently dark or negative in some way. I think that's all just leftover bad publicity that, yeah, the church cast onto them, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Mhm.
That's just, and anti-paganism stuff in general that's still kind of lingering. Other than that, I mean, there are with runes, like there's always going to be one camp of people that are like, oh, they're not magic at all. They're just letters. Like there's, there's no sacred symbol. They're A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? And that's all they are. And again, to that, I go back to my argument of like, well, writing is magic, like in and of
Mhm.
itself. So, like, right out of the gate, like, I'm sorry, no, that's a flawed argument. And there's other reasons why I'm not going to get into all that now, but there's definitely a lot of stuff that points towards there being more than meets the eye to those systems. So you're always going to see some of that. And then there's things that are going to be associated with certain groups. Like there's always going to be, unfortunately, correlation between some Nordic symbolism and like, you know, neo-Nazi hate groups and stuff like that. And
Mm.
so that I say like just because somebody used a tool in a negative way doesn't make the tool a negative thing. Runes are
Right.
just, they're a tool. Yes, there's negative groups that have latched onto them at some point for their own purposes.
Just like the pentacle,
Just like
the
anything else,
inverse
right? Yeah,
pentacle,
right.
yeah.
So, yeah, so again, I think it's like you trust your own individual experience with them, right?
Mhm.
I would encourage people to explore working with them a little bit and go off their own experience and what they feel rather than trusting what someone else is going to say about them. And that's probably a good piece of advice for almost any spiritual tool. Runes definitely included. Other than that, yeah, no, I just think that um, they're they're not as complicated as they may seem. I think a lot of times um, people shy away from them because it seems very foreign languagey, and it's like, oh, I got to learn this whole other
Yeah, yeah,
language before I can even understand the tool that I'm working with. Again, I think it's a lot simpler than that. I mean, I would say probably 70 or 80% of the runes look just like our modern letters. They just are all straight lines. There's no like curved
yeah.
lines in rune, or at least not in the Elder Food art. So yeah, just don't be scared off by needing to learn a little bit of something new. That's we all start out that place, right? You want to learn tarot. You want to learn tarot, you're gonna start looking things up in a guidebook when you first start doing your own readings. That's okay. And other than that, just know that like they do go beyond the symbol too. Like the meaning of the rune is deeper than the lines that you write on a piece of paper to stand for that energy. So I would say if you start working with them for your own personal practices, consider doing like some meditations on the energies behind the symbol, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And at some point, I'm going to do a rune class too that's going to be offered virtually somehow because I've had people ask that. I
Hmm.
can do them in person. So if you're here in Sedona and you want to pop in and do um, some rune training, we can do that. But I'm going to put something together so that people can access it if they're not here in the local area. So that's coming at some point. But yeah, I would say just explore if you're drawn to. They're a great tool. So.
Yeah. And then also you are holding a sound bath once a month
Oh,
as
yes.
well too. I think right now you have it at the last Saturday of every month, but we'll keep everything updated on the website, you guys, so you can always check it out. But yeah, Relic wants to be consistent with this, so he's going to be having it once a month. Right now, every last Saturday of the month. And I believe they're starting at like 6:30 and going
Yeah,
until about like
6:30.
6:30 to 7:30,
I would
maybe a little
say,
bit longer,
yeah,
you
hour,
know.
hour and a half, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely well worth your time. So if you're
Yes.
here in Sedona on the last weekend of the month, come check that out. And yeah, if we change the dates, we'll post it online or something. But right now, last Saturday of the month is the day. So
Yes.
yeah, so come check out a sound bath if you're here in Sedona, and come get a rune reading, and just I don't know, just stop in and say hi if you want. Come sit on our big cool crystal chair in front of you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Relic, for having this conversation and sitting down with me today and all of that. Everybody, you can find Relic again on the Crystal Magic Psychic Center website, where you can choose to do a rune session with him or even some sound healing or even both. You can do both if you really wanted to. And I think that would be a really cool experience as well. So, guys, as always, thank you so much for tuning in to the Sedona Psychics and stay magical. And we'll see you next time.